Michael, it's great to be here with you today. I'm excited about our new collaboration. Tell us a little bit about why you're excited about it.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to note that it's not just me that's excited about it. As soon as we announced it, the submission started coming in within minutes of folks that are interested in all kinds of parts of it at different levels and the goals that they're trying to meet. So it's not just you and I that are interested because this is our sort of professional field, but the folks that we're serving are really excited as well. So it's really rewarding to see that kind of career engagement on their end. I think I'm so pleased that the lab is in a position and has such a community of forward-thinking chaplains that we can partner with you, the expert in all things career, to fill this sort of gap that very often arises in chaplaincy education and training, which is really rich in terms of its focus on content and practice and theory. So in terms of academic education and field training and supervision and experience, chaplains get so much of that in very many places, and that's a wonderful part of the profession. But I think very often overt attention to chaplaincy as a career and how one can advance in that career and make choices and really pursue one's own path as a chaplain is not so much part of the conversation, and that's understandable. It takes a lot of time and dedication and effort to address those things. So I'm glad that we're in a position to be able to offer that type of training for so many chaplains that might not otherwise get it as part of their formal education.
Absolutely. And something that strikes me about chaplaincy is that it helps people form so many different kinds of skills and competencies that then can be used in a variety of different settings. Could you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I think that this gets to the heart of what is sometimes seen as a division between chaplaincy and other careers. Chaplaincy is so intensely focused on one-on-one encounters that very often start from a mundane circumstance or situation, but very quickly can proceed to a very profound experience that the care recipient is going through, especially in places like healthcare or corrections or places like that where people are there for what is objectively a negative reason. So it can be difficult to think about the skills that are required to provide that kind of care as transferable skills. They're so they're intimate, they're deep, they are intensely personal between the chaplain and the care recipient. But I think what your work is so good at is saying, yeah, that's true, and no one is denying that at all. But we can actually describe these skills in a way that is understandable in other industries or by people who are sort of chaplaincy adjacent, because the chaplains that I know who have made kind of the boldest and biggest moves in their career are the ones who have successfully explained their work to people around them who aren't chaplains. And so I think this kind of training, even if it's not intended toward a specific goal for an individual chaplain, it's incredibly useful in the long term because it allows chaplains to move in a bigger number of professional circles than they might do otherwise.
That's such an important point because I think that the chaplaincy is something that can really be mysterious to so many people who exist outside of it, who maybe haven't had direct experience with a chaplain and have maybe just heard things in passing. Maybe there's some misconceptions or myths out there. And lay people just often really don't understand what it's about, what kinds of
Yeah.
skills or qualities people might have who have worked in the chaplaincy. Would you say that that's accurate?
Yeah, and I can say that it's accurate both from personal experience and from the research that the lab has done. So on a personal level, my professional work with chaplains began almost 10 years ago with an organization that was a membership group for chaplains working in seaports around North America. Now, talk about work that goes completely unrecognized and unknown. Most people don't know. Well, maybe they do now after the recent longshoreman strike, but most people don't know how important ports are. So they don't know about the people who are working in those ports and the seafarers that are calling there. Chaplaincy in that context is so vital because it meets a need that is otherwise going to go almost completely unmet. When a seafarer comes in, that person, usually a guy, has been on the ship for weeks or months at a time. They've had very little interaction with anybody outside the crew, and that can be really isolating. And a lot of times, all they want is a little bit of normalcy. So the chaplain comes on board, and of course, if the crew requests prayer or a service or whatever, the chaplain's going to do that. But more often, they do things like bring Wi-Fi cards on board so the guys can use their laptops and phones to call home or whatever. They drive people to Walmart to buy deodorant and Doritos and shoes and stuff that they otherwise wouldn't have access to because they can't just get off the ship. They're not American nationals. They can't just leave, so they have to be escorted to and from places. So that kind of work is really at the heart of chaplaincy as accompaniment and just providing a little bit of normalcy for people that are working in a very difficult environment. So that's experiential. But we did research with Gallup in the past couple of years where we reached out to folks and we were trying to figure out how many people have actually interacted with a chaplain. That was the basic question we wanted to ask. And so we got really rich data out of that. But one of the data points that we found is that despite the fact that we gave a very clear and concise definition of chaplaincy, and we workshopped that definition for weeks together. That one sentence that you have to sneak in, no, I shouldn't say sneak in, that you have to get in so that people know what you're talking about is crucial. So we gave them a definition and said, okay, now that you know what we're talking about, tell us about the last time you worked with a chaplain. And a huge number of people said, yes, I've engaged with a chaplain, and here's what it was. And what they described was not a chaplain. It was, I talked to my priest on the way out of mass, or I went to my pastor for counseling or whatever. And of course, those are important interactions and they're kind of chaplaincy adjacent, but they're not professional chaplaincy. So the point being, even after we gave a definition, people have this idea in their head of what chaplaincy is, and we're having to work really hard to clarify that and let people know what it is that professional chaplains do. I think it was the end of 2019, or maybe the very beginning of 2020, but the actor who played Father Mulcahy on MASH died, and we sort of had this dark joke of in the world of chaplaincy, Father Mulcahy is dead, and we're trying to get that message across. People think about a white male clergy person that provides religious service for people. And of course, chaplains will do that, but that's not really what professional chaplaincy is all about. And we're working really hard to move the needle on public perception of that.
So interesting. It's yeah, I think it's an area that just, there's a lot of confusion about, there's a lack of awareness. And so I imagine that that poses challenges for people who are coming from this background, who are looking at what is out there, what the possibilities are, how they can use their experiences and their skills and their interests to figure out their next steps and position themselves for whatever they might wish to do, however they might wish to be of service in the world. So, can you say a little bit about why it's important for people coming from this background to be able to articulate not only what they're looking for, which is important, but also what they have to offer in a variety of settings?
I think being able to articulate both of those things is really important because it helps them navigate communities and contexts where there is a lot more that they could offer if the context understands what it is they're doing. And let me use healthcare as an example. Healthcare facilities or systems that have a really deep understanding of what it is that chaplaincy and spiritual care provides utilize their chaplains in enormously effective ways. And chaplains have a powerful voice in a variety of ways. They sit on the right committees and they're part of the right conversations to make sure that spiritual care is integrated really broadly into the work of that organization. On the other hand, organizations that don't really understand what it is that chaplains do, but they employ chaplains anyway, can intentionally or not silo those chaplains off. Like, okay, you sit over here and you do your chaplaincy thing, but that's all. And that really is a missed opportunity for all involved because it means chaplains don't get to influence the mission of the organization, and the organization loses out on the many ways that chaplains can advance the mission in ways that a lot of people would really understand and appreciate if chaplains were better integrated into the work that we're doing. So I think that this kind of training that allows chaplains to articulate what they do better, it helps get over that gap of understanding between the chaplain and everybody else in the organization, because in many cases that gap exists and it just makes it impossible for chaplains to be fully contributing members of a facility or a system or whatever.
So it sounds like it's important for the organizations that employ or work with chaplains. It's also important for the chaplains for their career growth and development and impact. And then it's also important for the broader community that has the chance to be impacted by what a chaplain can offer and can bring to the work that they're doing.
It really is. And this comes up in conversation quite often with individual chaplains. Back in April, the lab took on the work of a company called Thorn Consulting. And so the founder retired, and up to that point, he had been the leading search consultant in the United States for spiritual care, education, and leadership. No one else does it. And so now the lab is really happy to do that. But the reason I mention that is that I will have conversations with chaplains who will say, I have an opportunity to advance and I don't know how to navigate this offer, or I want to apply for this other job and I don't know what to ask for because this training has never been an explicit part of their professional development. And so I always enjoy those conversations because it helps chaplains understand their value both in financial and more intangible ways. And I love when I hear back from chaplains saying, I was able to get the promotion and I was able to get more perks, more pay, whatever, because you helped me understand what it is I do for this organization. And I was able to articulate that and pass it along. So I love doing that on a one-on-one basis. How much more efficient if we could train entire groups at a time and they can go out and do it on their own.
Well, something I love about that story, Michael, and I appreciate you sharing it, is that people often do want to learn and grow and advance in their careers, and it can be challenging to figure out how to do that, regardless of what industry you're in or what kind of role you're coming from or what your background is, what kind of training you've had, any of those things. It can be challenging for a number of reasons. It can bring up different insecurities and fears and concerns, and it
Hmm.
can really, be challenging. And so to be able to have people who one can go to have resources and frameworks and tools and systems and approaches that can make it a bit easier, make it less mysterious, make it clearer, make it easier. It really can accelerate the progress. And when somebody is able to understand the value that they bring and believe in themselves and then advocate for themselves, it makes their profession more sustainable. Sometimes we have this conception that in order to do good in the world, we have to be starving. Right? You can't make a good living and do work that you care about that makes a positive difference in the world, can you? I mean, I get this question all the time as somebody who specializes in helping people navigate careers in social impact and ways that people can make a positive difference. There is this notion that it's one or the other, right? I gotta choose. I gotta
Yeah.
choose either something I enjoy or something that pays the bills and helps establish financial stability,
Mhm.
and something else over here that makes the world a better place. When in fact, what I have found through my work, working with hundreds of clients over the years as a coach, is that you don't need to choose. It's important to believe that you can actually have all of those things, and it's going to take some work on your part to
Mhm.
make it happen. But there are certain best practices,
Mhm.
tools, resources, habits, practices, I think is an important word to keep in mind that can
Yes.
really help you do it. And so that's what I'm excited to be sharing with folks through the custom career management program that we've put together.
You know, I really like that word practices because it helps convey the fact that the type of introspection that a person needs to do to advance in a career, frankly, doesn't usually happen on its own. It doesn't happen naturally. And a good analog might be something like therapy. You know, okay, you understand, I feel I'm down in a funk, I feel stuck in life, or I've been getting really upset about this thing that seems like it shouldn't be upsetting me. What's going on? Okay, well, you've determined that you don't feel as good as you should, and when you go to a therapist, they're not gonna dump a bunch of information on you and say, "Well, you just need to hear this and you're gonna be fixed." They help you look inside and figure out what's going on. And okay, that's probably a little bit more intense than our career program is. But the point is, I know some folks think, all right, well, I have a resume and it's got my education, it's got my work history, it's got my job responsibilities. So what else is there to say? And I've sent it out to 20 different jobs and no one's responding. So I must just not be good enough because I've given them all the information. No, you probably haven't. um, Throwing all of that stuff down as a list on a document and sending out, that's not career development, that's not career advancement. And you're up against people who are being much more intentional about it. And so I think having this practice of introspection about what you want to accomplish and how you accomplish it on a daily basis is so vital. And it takes prompting, it takes someone external to you pushing you a little bit to dig deeper and figure out what it is you're doing as the person managing your own career. And that's so important and so valuable. And I think having an external partner to do that is the only way to do it. You're not going to do it on your own.
You mentioned some really important words there, Michael, I want to call attention to. One of them was introspection. And absolutely, I echo that. The folks who I work with, they constantly talk about how doing the reflecting, looking at their lived experiences, engaging in storytelling about key experiences in their lives, using that to clarify what they're looking for and what they have to offer. You also mentioned being intentional, and that's something that I've noticed among the community that you serve through the work that you and I have already done together over the past few years. It's really important to these folks to be intentional. And that's the same thing with other people I support in different industries and occupations. Intentionality, right? Maybe
Mhm.
you've been sort of reactive in your career. Maybe you feel like it's happened to you. Maybe you feel like jobs have fallen into your lap, and maybe you haven't had to interview for a job for 20 years. Maybe you've never negotiated for a compensation package and you know nothing about that. Maybe you haven't even had to have had a strong resume that showcases your relevant skills and accomplishments, because jobs have just kind of come along. And so today, because of a number of changes, there's a lot more competition when it comes to different opportunities, professionally speaking. And so that has changed the way that job search and career transitions work. And
Mhm.
so our job here, through this partnership, is to help people understand how it works and tap into best practices and tools that will help them reflect, clarify, and engage in intentional exploration. So
Mhm.
again, I'm really delighted to be part of this with you with the Chaplaincy Innovation Lab. Um, I'm excited for the impact that we're going to have with folks and supporting them as they navigate their next steps. Any
Mm.
closing words on your end, Michael?
I think that what I hope that we can accomplish with this program, and not just for participants directly, but for everyone that learns about it, is to help people be comfortable with the idea of chaplaincy as a career. So many people, quite rightly, uh, they are pouring themselves out into this work because they experience it as a vocation, a calling. This is something that I am impelled to do for whatever reason, and that can be described in lots of different ways, and that's good. On the other hand, it can result in that notion of what you said before of, if I'm going to do any good in the world, I'm going to have to suffer for it, and I have to, make do with whatever scraps I can assemble, and that's not a very good way of going through life. But at the same time, for a lot of people who experience chaplaincy as a vocation, I think that there can be a very understandable reluctance to think of it as a career and to break it down into things that are quantifiable or putting a label on skills or whatever. And being comfortable with that as a process is itself an achievement, because that now gives you power to exert much more control over your own career, instead of saying, well, because my career is always at the service of others, I can't take an active part in where it's going. I want to get over that barrier for people, whether they know it's there or not. And I think this program is going to do just that.
Definitely. I'm reading a book right now on your life's mission, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of talk about purpose and the kinds of things that you and I have been talking about together today around reflecting and being intentional. And I definitely understand that feeling. I've done work in the environmental protection space, and as a coach, both of those vocations, I feel very passionately about and, have really, as you said, poured myself into. And
Mhm.
so while I'm not a chaplain, I feel like I get it in terms of feeling like this is work that I'm being called to do. In
Mhm.
fact, I left my comfortable role as the director of strategic communications for a sustainability office at a major research institution, and I did it because I believed so much in my potential to have a positive impact through my work as a coach, which I'd already been doing on the side for many years. And, that was this big, scary leap for me. So I can also really relate to people who are
Mhm.
contemplating making some kind of change in their career, in their life, moving from one industry or sector or role type to another. I've done that many times over, and I've supported hundreds of people to do that as well. So whether somebody is looking for leadership development or to explore what else could be out there in terms of different
Mhm.
types of roles, those are things that we can support them in. So
Yep.
really excited, and let's go.
All right. Sounds good.